Consecration and Warfare. When we began to sing the Bondservant song, the question I heard during a prayer meeting on Monday night came to mind. I also heard,
I do not need lip service.
Then I saw the Lord Jesus turn his back on us. I repented about the lip service, and while we were still singing, he looked over his shoulder at us and asked,
Are you sure?
Then he turned and walked into our midst. I saw that we all had bowls of incense, but some were filled and others were not. On the ones that were not filled, I saw something like a siphon underneath the bowl. I followed its connection till I saw what was sucking up the incense. It was an idol in the person's heart. I also saw that these idols had placed veils on people's eyes, so they could not see they were offering little or no incense. While we sang, Draw Me Close to You, I saw the Lord Jesus pulling off the veils from people's eyes, causing them to realize the state of their hearts. Then they laid their bowls of incense at his feet and began to remove their idols, which looked like tiny gold figurines, from their hearts. The more their hearts were made free of these idols, the more incense they could offer to God. Then I heard,
Many of you need to go back to your consecrations and see how far you've fallen.
After this, the Lord began to bath them. First, he poured water, which was like oil, on their head. Then, he specifically washed the neck, arms, feet, and other joints. Then, he put a yoke on them, on their neck, hands, and ankles, and led them. I noticed the yoke was chained to the Lord Jesus, and it was elastic in nature. While we sang, We Want to Know More, I saw a thick, dark mist approaching, and in the midst of the darkness stood a man with an army behind him. I had an impression of the Antichrist. Then I saw us with the Lord, still with chains on our hands, and he led us into the darkness. While we sang, Get Us Ready, the dark mist thickened as we went in. Shadows ran past people, trying to slash at their knees. The wind blew stronger, almost pushing people down, but they still kept their eyes on Jesus and moved forward. At some point, some fell to their knees and slowed down. Then these shadows moved in again and surrounded them. I heard,
Voices, a cycle of 2 years.
When I inquired about it, I had an impression the counting began from the time the message on voices was preached. It seemed as though I was trying to cover my ears to avoid listening to these voices, and I also felt fear hovering around me. Then I heard,
The things that easily ensnared them will come back for them.
It seemed there was going to be a wave of attack on us of the things we once overcame. Horses, mostly white and brown, stood beside each person, waiting for them to overcome their battles. Some, who managed to overcome these voices, climbed their horses and rode away. Then I saw a man sitting on a throne in a dark, high place, and by his right was a lady laughing. I had the impression of Mystery Babylon. Behind them was something like an army of the undead. I noticed in their camps were cobwebs and iced places. I had an impression of people, including Christians in them. Deeper into their coven were thick cocoons and ice with people inside. I heard,
The generals.
A being was released, and I heard the name Ice Queen. I had an impression she was to spread coldness in people's hearts. She blew the ground where the horses rode, and it froze, taking out some of the horses. I had an impression that the horses which were taken out did not have the gospel of peace on their feet. Some horses grew something like metal hooves and were able to ride on the ice. Then I saw someone, of whom I had an impression, was a general who had gone ahead, fighting the Ice Queen. It seemed he had fought to the point where he was alone, and he had to sacrifice himself. Then she blew on him, and he slowly turned ice, seemingly bowing down to her on one knee. Another soldier ran in after him, ripped the sword out of his hand and slashed at the woman, cutting off her right arm from her shoulder. I heard,
"It's okay to take your brother's sword and fight with it.
Then there was silence. The voice continued.
But this is not for everyone."
It seemed as though the sword would hurt the person if he didn't wield it properly, or if he asked for it out of time. Then another soldier ran in and roared like a lion, melting the ice off the former soldier. I had an impression of the sound of the king. Then I heard,
"When your brother is restored, give him his sword."
I also heard,
"This is why I wash you with water."
I saw the Lord on the throne, and he had a bowl of blood in his hand. He was marking people on their forehead, on their hands, and on their feet. It seemed like this marking was in preparation for war. Then I saw a very dark place, and in the midst of the dark place were eyes glowing red. I heard the snorting of bulls. Then I heard,
"The gods are coming."
29th May, 2024. Sister, VNB. Copyright, Gamwatch.